As you can see here, Molly and Mark are driving on a moderate risk roadway where speeds never exceed 50 miles per hour. Mark is explaining the important elements of space management to Molly. Drivers must always be aware of the area surrounding their car, including everything to the front, rear, and both sides of the car. In order to manage this space, you must always keep your eyes moving to determine appropriate driving actions. Let's take a peek and see how Molly and Mark are doing.
Now, I know we've talked about the space around the car a lot already, but you need to know what's going on around you at all times. Can you tell me what you see to the left rear of the car?
Well, there's a car back there. And there's also a car ahead of me in the left lane.
Good. It's important to be aware of your surroundings because they can change in a hurry, like that. Now, what just happened there?
That car just cut in front of me and is now in my lane.
And how did you react to manage the space around your car?
Well, I slowed down to give the car room in front of me and increase my following distance.
That's a good example of using speed control to avoid a collision. It shows the importance of being alert and constantly scanning the area around you. No matter how well you're driving, there's always the risk of someone else driving poorly. There are two other elements of space management: lane position and communication.
While speed control is the most obvious form of space management, lane position and communication play a significant role. Let's take a graphical look at how lane position helps you manage the space around your car. In this example, the car is traveling in the middle of the lane. However, notice what happens when a car traveling in the opposite direction approaches. Because the opposing car is traveling so close to the double yellow lines, the driver of the other car repositions their car in the right side of the lane. Doing this gives them more comfortable spacing between their car and the oncoming vehicle. Now watch what happens just ahead. The car ahead has come to a stop at a stop sign, but their car is slightly sticking out into the intersection. In order to avoid any problems, the driver of the moving vehicle shifts to the left side of their lane. Both of those were examples of how lane position can be a valuable tool in space management. There's still one more element of space management you should know about, and that's communication. By communication, I don't mean shouting at other drivers. However, using your turn signal is a valid form of communication. It warns other drivers of your plans, which allows them to increase their following distance if necessary. Lights are also a form of communication. Properly functioning brake lights alert trailing vehicles that you're slowing down. You should regularly check to see if all your lights are working. Your horn is another way to communicate with other drivers. You can deliberately warn fellow drivers of mistakes they're about to make, but don't use it to vent frustration. You'll just frustrate somebody else and make the situation worse. As you drive, you should always be adjusting your speed, lane position, and communication based on changing conditions. Some conditions that require action are change in traffic flow, such as rush hour traffic jams, time of day, change in weather conditions, change in speed limits, and among many others, traffic controls.
You're doing great, Molly. How are you feeling?
More comfortable than I was before.
You'll get even more comfortable as you get more experience behind the wheel.
I'm excited. What's next?
Well, it looks like this would be a good time to change lanes because we have to be in the left lane to make a turn up ahead. Now take your time and find an appropriate opportunity to change to the left lane safely. Don't forget to use your signal. As you check your mirrors, make sure the gap in the left lane is large enough.
Everything looks clear to me, Dad.
Hold on, Molly. That car approaching in the left lane is coming pretty fast. You'll want to wait till they pass to make your move. You always want to make sure that other vehicles don't have to adjust their speed or change lanes.
Okay, so now it looks good. There's no one in the left lane anywhere near me.
I agree. So make one last quick check, then move smoothly into the left lane. You want to avoid abrupt steering and braking if you can. That was pretty smooth, Molly. And don't forget to turn your blinker off. You don't want to be that girl with her signal on for miles and miles ahead. That can be dangerous and it's annoying to other drivers. Do you know what to do now that you're in a new lane?
Adjust my speed to match the speed of traffic in this lane.
That's exactly right.
Molly's looking pretty good out there. Now you'll often find that you have to delay a lane change just like Molly had to. Here are a few other reasons for having to do this. First, there may be a car directly next to yours in the lane you want to move into. You can solve this problem by speeding up or slowing down until there's enough space for you to safely change lanes. You might also find that you want to change lanes, but you are quickly approaching an intersection. Just wait until you pass through the intersection before making a lane change. While it's not illegal, you should never change lanes in the middle of an intersection. It's way too dangerous with all of the turns being made, the potential for cross-traffic running red lights, and pedestrians crossing the street.
Now that we're on an empty residential street, it's a good time to practice some specialized turns. Let's start with a two-point turn using that driveway up ahead. Good, you remembered to signal. Now you can either pull into the driveway or back in. Do you know what you should be doing when you back out onto this street?
I need to signal to the left since I'm backing out to the left, and look out the rear window as I back out.
Right, and don't forget to check for oncoming traffic. Now that you've backed out, just drive in your new direction. We'll practice a three-point turn up ahead.
Three-point turns are used to reverse driving direction when two-point turns or U-turns aren't options. To complete a three-point turn, first signal to the right to indicate that you intend to pull over, then signal to the left. Use your mirrors and glance over your left shoulder to check for traffic. Then drive forward, turning the wheels so that your car ends up perpendicular to the street. Stop before you hit the curb. Once stopped, put your car in reverse and look out the right and left windows to check for traffic. Begin backing up by turning the steering wheel to your right with your left hand. The goal is to end up a 45-degree angle to the curb, braking before you hit the curb. Put the car in drive and check for traffic before driving in the new direction. U-turns should only be performed when they are legal and there is adequate space to do so without interrupting traffic. Never make a U-turn across double yellow lines. To complete a U-turn, signal left and check for oncoming traffic. Accelerate lightly while turning the direction you want to go. Once the turn is made, enter your new lane and accelerate as necessary.
Okay, now that you practice making some turns, let's work on the different types of parking. The safest kind is probably curb parking. Let's try it right up here. Remember, you want to keep your wheels parallel to the curb and park within 18 inches of the curb. The closer, the better. Whoa, I think that's a little too close.
I'm sorry, Dad.
Oh, don't be sorry, Molly. This isn't easy. It takes lots of practice and experience to get a good sense of where the curb is.
Can I give it another try?
Absolutely. And when you do park like this, remember to leave enough room between your car and the car in front of you so it'll be easy for you to pull out.
How does it look, Dad?
You're definitely within 18 inches of the curb. Although you could be closer, you did much better this time. We'll practice this more later. Now let's head for a parking lot so we can practice angle and perpendicular parking.
Parking lots can be stressful for all drivers, especially new drivers. Annoying fender benders happen all the time in parking lots because drivers just don't pay enough attention. So be cautious and defensive when driving through a parking lot. Molly is attempting angle parking. In order to do so, she must leave at least 5 to 6 feet between her car and the other parked cars. Once she finds a space, she must signal and drive forward until she sees the center of the parking space. Once she comes to a stop, she should straighten her wheels to make sure she begins backing out straight when she exits the space. Now let's watch as Molly attempts to park in a perpendicular parking space.
This is the most common type of space found in parking lots, so you need to get used to it. As you approach the space, keep at least 8 feet between your car and the cars in the row you're going to park in. After you signal, position the car so that the front bumper is just beyond the tail lights of the car immediately before the space. Now turn the wheel sharply and slowly enter the space. Always pull ahead far enough so that your rear bumper isn't sticking out of the space and into the parking lot traffic. You want to be as centered as possible within the space, and remember to straighten your wheels. Good job.
Mark's setting up orange cones, which can only mean one thing: parallel parking. Parallel parking is the most difficult type of parking to master. It often involves parking between 2 cars on a busy street and can be extremely stressful to any driver, especially new drivers. It takes time and patience to master parallel parking, so you should practice this in an empty parking lot between 2 large cones or other parking aids. Molly's probably going to have a lot of trouble with parallel parking at first, and so may you. So instead of watching her make a lot of mistakes, let's head outside so I can show you how parallel parking should be done. I brought you out here to give you a bird's eye view of proper parallel parking technique. When parallel parking, try to find a space that's at least 5 feet longer than your car. Otherwise, you might not be able to successfully park in that space. Now, as you approach a parallel parking space, you need to signal to warn other drivers behind you. Then pull up next to the car ahead of the space, keeping the back of your front seat lined up with the back of the other car's front seat. The seats should be aligned, just like this. You should also leave 2 to 3 feet between your car and the car next to you. After shifting into reverse, look over your right shoulder before slowly backing up. As soon as the car starts to move, begin turning your wheel all the way to the right. Continue backing up until the back of your front door is lined up with the rear bumper of the car next to you. When you reach this point, begin turning the wheel away from the curb as you continue backing into the space. Once into the space, straighten the wheels as necessary and pull forward or backward to center yourself between the other cars. Ideally, you should be parked about 6 to 8 inches away from the curb. Not too bad. Now let's recap parallel parking as one smooth maneuver, only this time we'll look at it graphically. Signal as you approach the parking space and pull up next to the car ahead of the space, keeping the back of your front seat lined up with the back of the other car's front seat. Leave 2 to 3 feet between your car and the car next to you. Back up slowly, turning your wheel all the way to the right. Continue backing up until the back of your front door is lined up with the rear bumper of the car next to you. Then turn the wheel away from the curb and continue to back into the space. Straighten the wheels and center yourself between the other cars. If you're taking a driver's test and must park between cones, treat the front cone like the rear bumper of a car and handle it as you would when parking on the street. Begin backing into the space as you normally would. The key is to begin turning your wheel away from the curb whenever the back of your front door lines up with the front cone. Then finish backing into the space and straighten out your car. Remember, parallel parking is difficult and stressful, but you have to learn how to do it. This video, or any other video or book, can't replace the hours of practice required to master parallel parking. Parents, take time to practice this with your students. You can't expect them to be experts just by watching us. And students, this is going to take a lot of practice, but don't let that frustrate you. It happens to everyone.
I wish we could have practiced parallel parking a little more. I know I can do it.
I know you can too, but we need a little break from driving. Pull over to the curb up ahead. We'll take a walk and get something to eat. Before you turn the car off, it's a good time to think about which way you should set your wheels when you're parked facing downhill like this.
Okay, I have this memorized. Let's see. Downhill with a curb, so I should turn my wheels toward the curb?
Okay, memorizing this is fine, but it's easy to figure out just by thinking about what would happen to the car if the brakes failed.
If the brakes failed, the car would go forward.
Right. So which way would you turn the wheels to avoid having the car roll into the street?
Toward the curb.
Exactly. Now, set your wheels and set your parking brake.
Okay, Dad, I got it. Let's go get something to eat.
Mark raised a very good point by giving Molly a break. It's extremely important to give your students breaks every hour, or as often as necessary, to keep them alert. There was also a good lesson about parking downhill with a curb. If your brakes fail while parked, the car will coast in the direction your wheels are turned. In this case, the car will coast into the curb and stop, rather than into another car or out into traffic. If you park downhill without a curb, park as close to the shoulder as possible and turn your wheels sharply toward the shoulder. Should your brakes fail, your vehicle will head onto the shoulder. If you park uphill with a curb, turn your wheels away from the curb. If your brakes fail, the back of your front tire will roll backwards and hit the curb as long as you are parked close enough. This will prevent your car from backing into traffic. When parking uphill without a curb, turn your wheels all the way to the right. This will ensure that your vehicle rolls backwards away from the road if your brakes fail. Little things like this go a long way towards ensuring your safety and the safety of other drivers.